What I've noticed about this house, especially the last year and a half, the activity really changed here. It became a lot more dark. Now, there's something I don't talk about in the videos, and that's about what's happened with people who's either come to visit this house or they were on their way to come and visit this house. There's been a multiple incidents, just one after another, over the last year, where people were going to come to visit the Lamb House, and some really strange things happened to them and they couldn't come. One person was going to come here. She had everything set up, the date set, and she had to cancel because a day before she was supposed to come, she had to go into emergency surgery.
Wow.
Now, this same lady rescheduled the visit. Her son was going to come with her. And I've mentioned this before in one of the other videos. While they were preparing to come and making their plans, he suddenly and unexpectedly died.
Wow.
And once again, she had to cancel coming to the Lamb House. Another gentleman who was a paranormal investigator, he scheduled to come to the Lamb House, and he's been here before. And when he was making the arrangements, he was going to come within the week, and his daughter contacted me and said that her dad had a heart attack, and they had to revive him multiple times. He ended up in ICU, and to this day, he's never been the same. He had no doubt that something evil was involved. From looking over these paranormal investigations in the Lamb House. That's his own words. Another man was going to come to the Lamb House. He was all set to come. And we got the house all cleaned up, waiting for him to show up. He didn't show up. And I'm like, well, that was a no call and a no show. It was kind of aggravating. And a week later, I found out he too passed away. A man and a woman, husband and wife, stopped by this house one day. They were from Massachusetts. And they stopped by just to say hi and take pictures of the house. And I talked with them. When they left the house, by the time they got to the Etna town line, their front end started shaking really hard on the car. And by the time they got to Newport, the car was shaking so bad they had to pull over. They went into a mechanic, and it turned out the lug nuts had loosened up on their car. Now, they drove all the way from Massachusetts, didn't have a problem with the car at all. But by the time they hit Etna town line, all of a sudden the car started shaking. Now, how does your lug nuts all of a sudden loosen up like that?
Yeah, it's strange.
When you're driving down the road, if somebody loosened your lug nuts up on your car, you'll know it the minute you pull out.
Yeah.
Another husband and wife were coming to the Lamb House, and they were on their way, and then I got a call from him, and he said we were in a bad car accident in Etna. And I thought that was kind of strange. I'm beginning to see a trend here building up, developing about people that were either coming to the Lamb House or had came to the Lamb House and some bad things happened to them. I ran into Etna real fast. Their car was totaled out. The wife and the husband had to be transported to the hospital by ambulance. It was a pretty bad accident. I messaged the husband. I hope this is all a coincidence. Time will tell. I do feel bad what happened to you and your wife. In all honesty, I questioned the house when you guys got into this accident. The husband answers back, another lady was supposed to come on the 3rd of September. Everything was scheduled. She was scheduling her flight. Right before she was supposed to come here, her AC quit working. It completely fried. The electrical burned out in it. That same day, her refrigerator burned out. And there was something else that happened with her car, and she had to cancel. And she thought that something was preventing her from coming. I'm beginning to see a big trend here. And then multiple people that were supposed to come to the Lamb House, multiple people within the last year said they were having car troubles and they couldn't come. There had been people that's coming to the Lamb House, and we have an hours where we do investigations on Fridays from 4 to 9. Well, when these people were making the drive, things always happened where they couldn't make it. So things would always happen that would prevent them from coming to the Lamb House. I've seen a lot of strange things about this, and we started keeping track of this. And I can go on and on and on with many examples of strange things that's happened with other people that got involved with the Lamb House. A former Carmel resident who's familiar with the Lamb House sends me a message on October 31st, 2019. Some of the information in the message is redacted. Hey Kent, I want to reach out to you. I recognize the Lamb House. This was actually my old house, and she and her 3 children lived in the house for many years. I spent most of my time in this house. It is pretty unsettling watching your videos about the house, as this is where I spent a lot of my time as a young child. My older cousin, whose bedroom was upstairs, used to play with the Ouija board all the time, and I always had a feeling that someone was watching me. I grew up in Carmel and lived there my entire life. The staircase that's between the room with the bathroom and the back room always scared me the most as a kid for some reason. My 2 cousins' bedroom was the one with the slanted window, and the other room upstairs was my eldest cousin's. I think the scariest thing that happened to me was being locked in the basement. The staircase that I mentioned and the basement were the 2 parts of the house that freaked me out the most. It was this bedroom the older cousin stayed in, who played with the Ouija board for many years while living in the house. This is the same cousin who locked her in the basement and wouldn't let her out. The older cousin was in her teens. It's likely at that age she was goofing around by locking her cousin in the basement to scare her. I believe many years after the Lamb sold the house, eventually these portals weakened and could have become dormant. But I also believe when the young teenager playing with the Ouija board in this house for many years, she unknowingly rekindled the portals. Once again, the portals become active. After this family moved out, new residents move in. This is around the same time some of the residents experienced strange events in this house. 1 year later, I receive another message from the young lady. Since speaking with you last, there was paranormal and strange things happening in my house in New Hampshire for the first time since we moved in. And my husband, who doesn't believe in the paranormal, witnessed it while I was in Maine this past weekend. I do not know if this is from speaking with you about the house in Carmel, but nothing out of the sort like this has happened in the almost 3 years we lived there. A gentleman who studies paranormal encounters and is also a book author contacts me about the encounters in the Lamb House.
I learned about you from watching Nuke's Top 5. The more I looked into your stuff, the more it became apparent to me that there was something going on there. And so I tracked you down and contacted you because I wanted to see if I could help, and also because I wanted to learn more, because what's going on there is just, it is unheard of in terms of the quantity of evidence that you're gathering. My hope was that we would be able to, work together to try and really come at this from a scientific angle of gathering evidence and trying to get a better understanding of what exactly is going on, because there's some repeatable phenomenon that I'm seeing that we should be able to measure. And of course, my hope was if we could get scientists there, they would have the proper equipment and tools and everything else to do this, to really explore what's going on there and get the word out in a new way to hopefully get more people interested and better understanding of what's happening there. I contacted a medium, kind of at your request. You wanted to see if you could get, any better understanding of what's going on in the basements and really dark stuff happening there. And she said as soon as she tried to tap into this, she heard hissing. But then she communicated to me that continued afterwards. Then her husband heard knocking at their door, and then he heard hissing. And she indicated that she fell down the stairs right after that. Well, I will say that the the day I contacted you, I got sick with what I at the time I thought it was COVID. I got a fever, did normal stuff. But the fever dragged on for a month. It was a high temperature. It was a temperature of around 100 degrees, but it was solid and consistent. And I went to a doctor, saw a rheumatologist. We did some blood work, but we conducted a lot of further tests, and we couldn't pin anything down. And eventually it went away. But what I noticed was that whenever we would have contact, or we would try and focus on, actually doing something together, planning something, my symptoms would flare up again. And I also was getting a lot of kind of poltergeist type activity in the house. In terms of my experiences, I was hearing some very dramatic knocking in my house. And it progressed to the point where I ended up seeing a shadow being. I was looking at a mirror that was directly in front of me. It was in my living room, an antique mirror on my wall. And I could see this thing behind me very clearly. I moved off to the left while I was watching it. It moved off to the left, but then I moved back to the right, and it continued off to the left and disappeared. There was no light source in front of me. There was nothing that could have been casting a shadow. It was solid black. It had, a human shape to it. And it matches the descriptions of shadow beings from what, people have been seeing and reporting forever. And so I set up a camera in the living room looking at that spot, trying to see if I could capture anything. And that camera itself didn't capture anything, but I had a camera in another room that could kind of see down the hallway, coincidentally. And what I captured was something moving in front of the camera and blocking the infrared lights on it. And I live alone. There was nothing in here that could have done that. And the camera itself didn't capture anything, and it should have. But clearly something blocked the lights for, I think it was about 10 seconds or so, and then moved away again. I also had some incidents more recently which involved some really terrifying and strange dreams, and very intrusive, dark thoughts that, were unlike anything I'd ever experienced. So am I going insane? Is something bad happening?
After doing investigations here, going to bed, and the nightmares you get are unreal. The one I had felt like I was being dragged off the bed in my sleep. It seemed so real, like it's really happening, and you can feel it.
Some visitors who came to the Lamb House experienced strange nightmares, sleep paralysis. Some stated for days they experienced overwhelming dark thoughts after visiting the house. When all this stuff started happening and this activity turned dark, we started having issues with our car. I got the car fixed. The belt snapped on it. The belt, the alternator belt snapped. I got that fixed. Everything was running fine on that. But then there was another problem with the car. I got that fixed. And then another problem with the car. I got that fixed. My daughter was with me and my grandson, and we were going down Irish Road. Once we got in the section of Irish Road where they found Naomi Mitchell's body, there was a loud pop sound on the front end of the car, and the car just started shaking all over the road. To this day, that car still broke down. It would have cost way too much to fix it. So we invested money in a different vehicle. We bought another vehicle. The vehicle was running fine. The guy drives it every single day. Never had issues with it. And the day we bought it, it ran fine. Well, the next day, my wife starts it up and she's driving down the road. All of a sudden, it's overheating. And she has to turn around and come back. Well, I fixed that problem. Then, the next day, there was some type of electrical issue with it. I'm like, okay, this is strange. And this electrical issue, whenever I was talking, I got it on camera, I was recording it. And what was really strange about this electrical issue, whenever I talked, the dash lights and the dummy indicators were reacting to my voice. Maybe it's an explainable malfunction. Hello? 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 You messing with my car? You messing with my car? That creeped me out. I wasn't able to fix that electrical issue, and I thought, well, we'll just back it up here. I'll take a look at it. Well, the next day I went to start it up. It's like the whole transmission was completely locked up. So we had to end up scrapping that car. It would have been way too much to fix it. The car's breaking down started after I made statements the Lamb house shouldn't be lived in by anyone. 10 months we were stuck at the house with no vehicle to get away. We had to save up to buy another vehicle. I thought the vehicle's breaking down was just a coincidence. So we save up money and we pay cash for another vehicle. I checked it over. There's no dash lights on, no check engine light. I drove it all the way to Bangor to go to the bank to withdraw the money out the bank. Drove it all the way back, not an issue. I pay for the car, bring it, I went to the tag office, insurance, everything was running fine. The next day we get in the car and start driving down Highway 2, and all of a sudden the engine light comes on. And then it's sputtering really bad. I mean, it's sputtering so bad you can't go on a long trip with it. You can't go very far. I took it to a mechanic. He replaced everything that would cause the misfire that was happening with that vehicle. I mean, it was such a bad misfire, you couldn't even get up a hill. So I spent all this money on it, and the mechanic couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. He couldn't explain it. I mean, he's here in Carmel, and he said maybe these spirits have something to do with it, because I can't figure this out. So now, this current vehicle we have now, we can't go very far. I wanted to go all over Maine doing investigations over the summer, but we're kind of stuck here. It's as if this house doesn't want us to leave. It wants us stuck here. I literally felt trapped here. I felt stuck. We couldn't go anywhere. I wanted to get away from this house for some time. I needed a break from it. But too many strange things would happen and we couldn't leave. We're stuck. And if it happened with one car, okay, one thing, but a second car, okay, well, maybe, but a third car, that's not a coincidence. And there's no doubt in my mind, the strange things that's going on here, something's off. Something's very wrong.